you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Lindgren, president of Randolph-Macon College, to which it is my great pleasure to welcome you on this historic evening featuring this congressional debate for Virginia's 7th District. You know, we love being at the epicenter of the center of the political universe and the cradle of congressmen. And we are just so very proud of these two candidates, not only for the service that they have provided this college and especially their students, but for their willingness to take a risk seeking out public service for the betterment of our futures. You know, Randolph-Macon College has had a long tradition of public service, starting with our namesakes who were sitting congressmen when the college was founded in 1830, all the way through today with our alumnus, Congressman Randy Forbes, serving well the 4th District here in Virginia. And in that regard, we're especially pleased that you're here to join us on this night. Now, Macon and Randolph, they're not here, but we do have some special guests I want to recognize. The sponsors of tonight's debate, Mac and Jan Reynolds. Mac's good friend and classmate and our special friend, the 12th president of Randolph-Macon College, Dr. Luther White. There's another president in the House, hailing all the way from California, our 13th president, Dr. Liddell Payne and his wife, Jean. And representing the 37th District of the State Senate in Virginia, Senator David Marsden and his wife, Julia. I often say that the fortunes of this college are inextricably linked with the town of Ashland. And for that reason, it gives me special pleasure to recognize and bring forward for a greeting here tonight, Mayor George Spagna.
Thank you, Bob. My students are not used to seeing me use notes, but I'm told I have a limited amount of time. As Bob said, my name is George Spagna, and I've been a professor of physics and astronomy at Randolph-Macon College since 1986. I'm not running for Congress. I also have the honor and privilege of serving as the mayor of the town of Ashland, a place that we call the center of the universe. And judging from all the attention we're getting, I think we got that about right. As mayor, let me extend a warm Ashland welcome to students, faculty, and staff from the college. Welcome also to President Lindgren, Heather Sullivan, distinguished guests, representatives from the media, and for those Ashland and Hanover citizens who actually managed to land a ticket, welcome home. And finally, a sincere center of the universe welcome to our candidates and my colleagues and friends, Dave Bratt and Jack Trammell.
Thank you, Mayor. It is now my pleasure to introduce our candidates. Dr. David Bratt joined the Randolph-Macon College faculty in 1996, serving RMC with both passion and distinction as both an economics professor and chair of our economics business department. He created our highly successful ethics minor. David and his wife, Laura, live in Glen Allen and have 2 children. Dr. Jack Trammell joined the RMC College in 2000 as our Director of Disability Services and also serves as an Associate Professor of Sociology. Having focused his career on helping people with disabilities, Dr. Trammell has been an indispensable resource here at the college. Jack and his wife Audrey reside in Louisa County near Mineral, Virginia, and 6 of the Trammell's 7 children are in college. I am also delighted to be sharing the stage this evening with Heather Sullivan, NBC 12's news anchor extraordinaire, and a very special thanks to NBC 12, our media sponsor, for its generosity and support. I will now ask Heather to review the format, ground rules, and decorum for tonight.
Thank you so much, President Lindgren, and thank you to all of our audience members for coming, and thank you to our candidates for being here. Now, our candidates, you've already been given the rules and the format for our debate this evening, but I'll just give a quick recap so that everyone knows. First, both of the candidates will each be given 2 minutes for an opening statement and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Now, there was actually 2 coin tosses last week. Dr. Trammell won the first coin toss, and he chose to speak first and to close last. And Dr. Bratt won the second coin toss, and he chose for Dr. Trammell to answer the first question first, and then Dr. Bratt will answer second, and then what we'll do is we're going to reverse the order for each question as we go through the debate. Now, the candidates will both be asked the same question, and they will each get 2 minutes to respond to that question. And gentlemen, you may also use that 2 minutes to rebut anything that the other candidate has to say. That's your time to do that. There are also some rules for the audience. We'd like to ask you to please silence your cell phones. However, we would like to invite you and encourage you to tweet during the debate, and we invite you to use the hashtag RMCDebate. We know you're going to want to burst out in applause from time to time, but we'd like to ask you to hold your applause until the end. If you do applaud or burst out while the candidates are speaking, you're actually going to take away their time to speak, so we ask that you try and hold on to that until the end. We also ask that you don't show any signage, nothing visible, nothing audible, either in support or opposition to either of the candidates. If there are any violations to the rules, you will be asked to leave the auditorium. But I think we're in for a really active and interesting debate this evening, so let's go ahead and get started. Again, Dr. Trammell, you won the coin toss and you chose to speak first, so we'll begin with you, and good luck, gentlemen.
Thank you. Well, how great to be here tonight. I love history, and the history that got us here is a very interesting history. A few months ago, I was sitting in my office a few buildings away from here, and I didn't know that I was going to be running for Congress. A few months ago, I talked to Dave on the phone, and he said, "I think I'm going to win this primary." And like many others, I said, okay. A few months ago, people at this college were inundated by the media after this dramatic primary victory, and anyone who was here on campus during that time remembers that was nuts. That was just nuts. So there's quite a history that gets us to this point. But the amazing thing about history is that it only gets us up to this point. And what's not written yet is what to come. Thomas Jefferson has a quote that I love. He said, "I like history, but I love the dreams of the future much better." And so tonight, you're going to hear from both of us some alternate visions for that future. And we're going to hear about how we're going to take care of vets, how we're going to take care of seniors, how we're going to fix our broken schools, how we're going to deal with some of the problems in Washington, D.C. that we're confronting. And the great thing about this is that this is democracy in action. And I want to give a shout out to the students from Cosby High School, by the way. They showed me the other day what democracy in action was. Those were tough questions, guys. And so I'm really proud to be here tonight. I'm proud to see all of you here, and if you're watching remotely, proud to know that you're watching. This is democracy in action, and I'm excited to be a part of it. Thank you.
Dr. Bratt?
Well, thank you as well to Randolph Macon, President Lindgren, for hosting this great debate tonight. And thank you also, by the way, for hiring me 18 years ago to teach the greatest students and friends one could ever imagine. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's an honor to be here. Go Jackets, and now I'm going to get to business. I'm running for Congress because Washington is broken. Obamacare is raising insurance costs and lowering the quality of your health care. 250,000 Virginians will lose their health insurance policies next month, November, right after the election because of Obamacare. $1.7 trillion in excessive regulation is crushing our economy at present. Illegal immigration on our southern border has not only caused a humanitarian crisis, but the border has now become a national security threat because of ISIS. The retirement programs that we promised to our seniors will be bankrupt in less than 20 years if we don't get to work to preserve and protect those programs. And I've taught economics here for 18 years, and I've never seen an economy or a labor market where college students, 40% of college students, will not get jobs upon graduation in the fields of their choice. That's not good. I believe we need to send an economist to Washington, D.C., to Congress to solve these economic problems and to restore trust in our vital American institutions, principles, and values. President Obama said it very clearly the other day. His policies are on the ticket this fall. He said, my policies are on the ticket. Make no mistake about it. You can vote for someone who supports President Obama's policies, like Jack does, or you can vote for someone who knows from hundreds of years of economic history that top-down, centralized government planning fails every single time it's been tried, every single time. I want to go to Congress to restore the American free market system, to restore our economy, and to spur job creation. And I want to be a check against President Obama's failed agenda. I'm running because I believe in America, and I believe we can make tomorrow better and brighter than yesterday. And I would ask for your vote this coming Tuesday. Thank you.
Okay, let's begin with our first question. President Lindgren?
Dr. Trammell, how should the federal government best respond to the Ebola crisis? And do you support a proposed travel ban to the United States from affected West African countries?
I think we have responded in part correctly. We have been trying to use processes that the CDC has put in place, and we have tried to be proactive. Some of our congressional delegation here in Virginia has suggested that we should have been more proactive, and I tend to feel that we can't err on the side of being too proactive. However, I'm also hesitant to act out of fear, and there has been a noticeable fear factor in how we have been reporting on this and how we have been reacting to it. So I would urge caution, and I would urge us to look at the procedures we have in place. In a couple of cases, we didn't follow those procedures, and now we're seeing the consequence for that. And moreover, I would say we should use targeted flight bans and not bring our economy to a halt with draconian measures that aren't targeted. So I think in this case, we have responded, we can respond better, but it should be very targeted.
Dr. Bratt?
Thank you very much. Yeah, when it comes to Ebola and the challenges we face, it's good to retrace the administration's position. In the first instance, they said Ebola will never make it to our borders. In the second place, they said it'll never break out of hospitals. In the third place, they gave instance after instance after instance of specifics, and the Centers for Disease Control and the D.C. leaders on this issue did not contain the threat of disease. And so now we're faced with this. And so I differ with Jack on this. I think we should have quarantined the Western African nations and the flights coming in. And I kind of liken it in the financial markets to a black swan event, right? A black swan event is a very low probability event that has catastrophic consequences. And that's what Ebola is, right? It's a low probability event.
Our next question. There has been substantial debate about the Affordable Care Act, including several bills passed by the U.S. House of Representatives aimed at certain provisions of the law. What, if any, changes would you make to the law in order to increase access and affordability of health care for Central Virginians? And we'll begin with Dr. Bratt.
Right, thank you very much. I would repeal and replace Obamacare immediately. I'm a free market economist, and I take free markets seriously. Obamacare is a federal top-down product with a mandate system that's already failing, right? 250,000 Virginians are going to lose their health insurance this month after the November election. That's not by consequence, that's by intent. They pushed that decision so that you would not see the consequences of Obamacare and have to deal with that before the election date. The employer mandate will be equally troublesome, and they pushed that beyond the 2015 election date. So the basic premise of Obamacare was they were going to take care of 45 million people who were uninsured, and that's a good thing. But guess what happened? Only 18 million people were taken care of at a cost of $80,000 per person. That's your federal government at work, right? And we didn't mention the biggest unintended consequence. It disrupted the health care for 250 million other Americans while trying to provide health care for 47 million and only providing it to 18 million at $80,000 per person. So let's go over the basic promises again because they're important. Obamacare was going to get rid of our emergency room problems, right? That is an inefficiency, and the hospitals are overcharging in ERs and passing that on to you and your insurance policies. The data show Obamacare hasn't solved that problem at all. In fact, ER usage is up. Under Obamacare, we were promised that you could keep your doctor-patient relationship, you could keep your insurance policy. That's no longer true. We've lost that. So instance after instance after instance, Obamacare has not lived up to its promise, and the cost, I haven't even mentioned, right, the kitchen table issues. I've walked the 9 counties in the city in our 7th district, and their top 2 issues for every Virginian and for every business, by the way, is Obamacare is crushing jobs along with the regulatory burden that the federal government has placed on our economy. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Trammell?
Okay, let me first of all return to the previous session and 2 points of clarification. Number one, President Obama is not on the ballot in this district. I just want to make sure everybody knows that. Number two, I did say already that I was in favor of targeted quarantines, and so I think Dave and I are actually in agreement on that point. Now, in terms of the ACA, the major goal of the ACA was to reduce the number of people who are uninsured and could increase the number of people who could have access to some basic care. And actually, we've added 8 to 11 million people, depending on how you estimate that. So that was the original purpose of the act. Check the box off. Now, the other thing has to do with costs. And we know that healthcare inflation in the last 2 years is the lowest it's been in the modern era. Again, check the box off. We can argue about some of these numbers, but Obamacare, ACA, has actually accomplished some of the things that it set out to accomplish. Real life story. Andrew was a student here. I taught him. I worked with him. He took over his family seafood business. Now, they gross tens of thousands of dollars, but they only net a very small amount because it's a business that has a lot of overhead. There's a very small margin. Andrew told me that he and his brother were going without health care because they couldn't afford it. They took the plan under the ACA. He actually got care under that plan and said it was very good, and that, to him, made the difference. That was what ACA was supposed to do, and it has helped 8 to 11 million people, many of them who couldn't get insurance before. So let's not lose track of what the original intention of the ACA was. Now, do we need to fix things with ACA? Of course we do. Small business exemptions. We need to help small businesses out who are struggling under that burden. There are also aspects of it that were not formulated correctly, and we need to fix and iron out those details. But we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, and we can't turn the hands of time backwards.
Thank you.
Dr. Trammell, a bipartisan group in Congress has introduced legislation to address the status of undocumented immigrant students. These efforts have become known as the DREAM Act, which would repeal federal policies that discourage states from offering these students post-secondary education benefits and provide legal permanent status. Do you support these efforts to legalize the status of undocumented immigrant students through the DREAM Act?
I do. And early in this campaign, I met students who are going to Virginia Tech and to other schools in our own state. They're in medical school. The soon-to-be doctor I met's a straight A student. I met an engineer in the same program. These are people who are going to contribute to our prosperity here. So I support the DREAM Act, but I also support comprehensive immigration reform. And this is the only Congress in history that has utterly failed at immigration reform. Now think about it. My family immigrated here in 1671 through the port of Alexandria. Immigration is in part what the greatness of this country is built on, but we've never failed like this before. So you have to ask yourself the question, is the problem immigration or is the problem this do-nothing Congress? And the answer is it's this do-nothing Congress. We need to pass comprehensive immigration reform with all the pieces, border security, visas, pathway to citizenship. Everything needs to be in there together. Piecemeal won't work. That becomes too partisan. And we've done it before. We can do it again. We know that the shelf life on immigration reform is usually 10 to 20 years. The world changes. It's not going to stay the same. But we've never failed so utterly like we did this time. And the next Congress has got to get it right.
Thank you. Dr. Bratt?
Thank you for the question. Actually, the DREAM Act I opposed in my primary. And just to be clear, when Jack mentions comprehensive immigration reform, that sounds nice. A lot of the central planning from Washington, D.C. sounds nice. But what that means, the House bill and the Senate bill, which was the Democrat bill, favored 10 million illegals coming across our border with a pathway to citizenship, right? So just to be clear, it's illegal. Now, no one in the room is against immigration. We are a country of immigrants. But we need to get at what a truly compassionate policy is. I opposed the DREAM Act. I said we should not do it. President Obama and the Congress were in favor of it. And as a result, President Obama pursued what's called DACA. He overrode the Congress and the will of the people, right? He overrode the Congress, put in place a policy called DACA. And the result is 50 to 100,000 orphans crossing the border, and that's just the beginning, right? And so the question is, people are people. I love every single person. I've taught third world economic development here for the past 18 years. So it's nothing against the people coming across the border, but let's ask ourselves what true compassion really looks like, right? If you want to help these people, let's do what we did after World War II with our arch enemies, right? Germany and Japan. We cannot take 7 billion people into this country because it is a great country. The reason the rest of the world wants to come to this country is because we have the rule of law. That's why everyone wants to come here. We have the rule of law, we have private property rights, and we have a free market system. And because we have those three things, we are the envy of the world, and we're the greatest nation on earth. And that's why everyone wants to come here. So as an economist, I understand what's made us great, and you don't want to ruin the pieces and the institutions that we've put in place that have made us great, right? So if you have true compassion, it's not for a few thousand people. It's let's have true compassion and get the economies in Latin America going, right? Nicaragua, El Salvador, where the kids are coming from. Let's get those countries moving again, and that's true compassion for hundreds of millions of people.
Thank you. Our next question, Dr. Bratt will begin. Do you support increasing the federal minimum wage? Why or why not? Dr. Bratt.
I do not support raising the minimum wage because I'm an economist. And if you just take the basic case study, let's look at Seattle. They're raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Upon announcement of that policy, what did restaurants do? They started firing waiters and waitresses, et cetera, immediately, right? So economic science is a science, and it's largely the science of the unseen, right? So what you usually look at is the minimum wage increases the wages for the people who keep their jobs. That's the good part. What's the bad part and the part you don't see? The part you don't see is the people that got fired, right? So businesses are in business, and everybody knows in business that restaurants are already a tough business. About 90% of them go under, right? That's the basic facts. And so now you're going to double the wage rate, right, from $7.50 roughly to $15 an hour like in Seattle. And what do you think is going to happen? The business can't make profits. They're going to have to lay people off. They're already laying people off because of Obamacare and the $1.7 trillion regulatory burden the federal government has put on them. That includes the EPA, the energy costs, et cetera. Businesses are suffering out there, right? So the last thing you want to do is to raise the price of labor, a key price in the economy. The best way to help these people, and we have other policies in place that economists favor, the earned income tax credit is much better, but the way to raise the wage rate is the way to do that happened in economic history. Your wage rate is exactly the same thing as your productivity level. So if you want to increase the wage rate in this country for real, instead of artificially picking wage rates out of thin air, increase the productivity of our kids who are competing in a global economy right now, and we're not doing well. In K-12 education, our kids are scoring at the bottom of science and mathematics right now in the industrialized world, at the bottom. That is our competitive disadvantage. If you want to increase wages for America, by the way, the bottom 80%
That's
of
time.
America has had their wages flat for the past 30 years, and so we do need to work on that, and we need an economist to go to D.C. to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Trammell?
Redirect quickly from the last section. I think immigration should be added to Dave's list of the institutions that have made this country great. Now, in terms of minimum wage and these people, I was one of those people. I made $2 an hour baling hay and putting it in a barn for my neighbor. And at that time, the minimum wage was increased to something like $2.12 an hour. And we had a meeting with the farm owner, and he said, "Boys, you're not really expecting me to pay you $2.12 an hour, are you?" And we kind of looked at each other, and we didn't say anything, and he tossed his hand and ended up paying us $2.12 an hour for the rest of the summer. Now, that 12 cents may not sound like much, but working 40 or 50 hours a week for the entire summer, I was able to use enough money to buy my first car. So when we talk about the minimum wage, I can bring up my 7 Nobel economists who were written about in the New York Times who say that going to 10-10 would have a tremendous economic benefit. But rather than waging my economic greats against Dave's economic greats, I'd rather just say I support the minimum wage because I've looked at the evidence myself, and I see the evidence that it raises people up into the middle class where they become consumers, they buy houses, they buy cars, they go to college, and that's the pathway to prosperity in this country.
Thank you.
Dr. Trammell, mandatory expenditures, which include programs such as Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, are consuming a growing share of the federal budget. In 2014, they totaled nearly 60% of all federal spending. How do you propose managing the federal budget while meeting the promises that were made to generations of Americans?
Well, I've never flip-flop on Social Security or some of the other programs that are so vital to our veterans. I have made the promise that we are not going to make cuts. I don't want to react to a climate of fear. Instead, what I would like to see us do is to return to some very basic concepts about that as individuals we follow all the time. I have to balance my checkbook. I have to pay down my credit card debt. We start with balancing the annual budget in this country. And we know, looking historically back to the past, that when we've had a series of years where we've actually balanced the annual budget, that enables us to eat into that debt that we need to deal with. Now, we're complicated here by the fact that we keep doing things, in essence, shooting ourselves in the foot. We go to Iraq once, we go to Iraq a second time, now we're about to go to Iraq a third time, and what have we accomplished? Why are we going back again? We've spent trillions going there that has not been in the budget. But I think it comes back to some simple concepts that we need a bipartisan effort on the Hill to work together to balance our annual budget, and we spread outwards from there. That's how we begin to tackle the issue. We didn't get there overnight. It took years for us to get into this situation. We're not going to wave a magic wand or push that red Staples, "that's easy" button. We're going to have to work at it, and the way to start is to balance the annual budget.
Thank you. Dr. Bratt?
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is that I pledged from immediately when I started running my primary campaign to preserve and protect all of the programs we have for seniors. And so Jack Trammell just talked about the national debt. He didn't answer the question that was asked at all. The question that was asked was about the unfunded liabilities in the Medicare program and the Social Security program, and he talked about the debt. The debt is approaching $18 trillion. That's the wrong question. What we're talking about are the unfunded liabilities that this country faces. They approach $127 trillion, and that's not a talking point. Jack said the other day in public that this is not even a problem we need to worry about. Wrong. It's the number one issue I ran my campaign on. It's the most pressing economic problem that our country faces by far. It's not a political talking point. How serious is it? $127 trillion, and those 4 programs will exhaust the entire federal budget by 2030. The entire federal budget. Do you want to know why our military policy is weak right now? Because the non-discretionary part of the budget, which is unfunded liabilities, is taking all of our money to pay for them, for those 4 programs. Another way of looking at it is that both the major programs, Social Security and Medicare, will be bankrupt by 2030. And so you did not hear an answer from my opponent, Jack Trammell, tonight on how to solve the question. So there will be no program, right, by 2030. They're both bankrupt according to their own Board of Trustees statements. That's the problem we have to fix. So I've proposed fixes in public back in the primary and now. And then Jack talks and tells nice stories and anecdotes. But what he's leaving off is he's running very negative ads right now against me that are false. Go look up the footnotes. They're false. They're not true. He's saying I'm going to cancel Social Security for seniors. He's scaring senior citizens, right? Senior citizens are scared out of their minds, and rightly, they should be. If they're going to lose a major program, so these false
That's
attack
time.
ads are not helping anyone. And if I had them in class, I'd give them an ethics paper and send them to the dean.
That's time. Our next question. American energy production continues to expand with hydraulic fracturing technology and shale development, creating additional U.S. jobs. Would you support exploring for oil and gas off the coast of Virginia? Dr. Bratt.
Absolutely. Energy, we have two Saudi Arabias beneath the United States border that we should be taking advantage of. The Keystone Pipeline is absolutely essential for the next wave of U.S. innovation and takeoff. Our economy's growing at 1.5%. China's growing at 7%. We have to do something to revitalize this economy, and energy is just a resource that's sitting there waiting for use. And so on the other side of the spectrum, the Obamacare philosophy is let's regulate everything and put business out of business, right? And so when it comes to the EPA, let's put coal out of business. The Obama administration is against aspects of oil. The Obama administration is against parts of liquefied natural gas and fracking because it's too dangerous, so they want to shut that down. Well, if you're against all three of those, you're against 80% of the energy consumption in this country, right? So when you go home tonight, you're going to use an iPad and a refrigerator and an air conditioner or a heater, depending on how cool it gets. That's what we're talking about. Right? The future of this country is at stake, and our administration is going down the wrong road. We need an all-in approach, and I do not want the crony capitalists deciding who the winners and the losers are. I ran against that. I ran against both parties. I ran against the Republican leadership and the Democrat leadership on crony capitalism. I want the price system and the free market choosing the lowest cost energy that our innovators come up with. We've wasted billions and billions of dollars on Solyndra, you know all the names, of failed investments by the government for folks who have crony relationships on Wall Street or fancy lawyers to K Street or special relationships to Congress. That's not fair for the other people that are competing in the energy industry as well. So answer is all in, all of the above on energy. It's an untapped resource that will get this country back on track. And that's why I think you should send an economist up to Washington to fix the economy and restore confidence in our basic American institutions and values and principles. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Trammell.
Well, Dave, fortunately, since you term limited yourself to 12 years publicly, you'll be out of there before the true Social Security crisis hits. So. And also, you were the one who has talked to seniors about being ready for bad medicine. All I've said was that I will keep my promise to seniors. Now, in terms of energy, I want to tell a quick story because I own a farm, and I have a creek that runs along the back of this farm, and an environmentalist friend of mine said, look, Jack, your farm animals are polluting this water. It goes directly into the bay. And I'm sensitive to this, so I say, okay, what do I need to do? He says, build a riparian buffer zone, put a fence up, plant the kind of plants that prevent erosion, and that will help. So I did this, and I went about 60 feet on average from where the creek was. Well, this friend came back out and said, look, this isn't enough. This needs to be at least 200 yards out here. And I said, look, my farm's only 25 acres. I won't have a farm left if I do this. So my point in telling that story is that energy is a shared responsibility. We need an EPA that's looking out for environmental safety, but we don't need an EPA that is getting in the way of profitable business and of expanding energy options. So when it comes to offshore drilling, when it comes to fracking, when it comes to any of the controversial issues in energy, We can't turn the lights off right now based on what we're dependent on. It becomes shared responsibility. Individuals, corporations, the EPA, we all have to bear that burden together in a way that doesn't put people out of business, but also looks out for the environment. Like me putting up this zone along my creek, that didn't put me out of business. I voluntarily did that. We all need to take on a shared responsibility.
Thank you.
Dr. Trammell, there is disagreement as to whether congressional approval is necessary for current military actions in Syria and Iraq. Do you think congressional authority is required for military action against ISIS? And if brought to a vote, would you vote in support of a resolution authorizing these actions?
I believe that Senator Kaine and others are correct that this conversation should be taking place in Congress. As I mentioned earlier, we've been to Iraq once, we've been to Iraq twice, we're on the verge of going to Iraq a third time. At what point does that begin to say more about us than it does about what's happening in Iraq? We need to have more clarity about what our purpose is there, given the human cost, given the economic cost, and that conversation is best taking place and constitutionally taking place in Congress itself. So I support Senator Kaine's initiative, and I believe that conversation should take place there. I have a stepson many of you have met, Daniel, who came back wounded. He's a Marine from Afghanistan. I'm very hesitant to put our men and women into harm's way. We need to have a very good reason and a very good justification for them being there, and I think we've got a better shot of that justification being a sound one if we're having that conversation in open dialogue in Congress where we have the agora of ideas and representation of viewpoints about that process.
Thank you, Dr. Bratt.
Yeah, I agree with my opponent on this one, that Senator Kaine has it right. In the Constitution, it is the role of Congress to give the final go-ahead on war. And so that's what's called for in the Constitution. I ran a principled campaign, so I'm for that. But it's more interesting to look at the context in which this question arises when you have to answer the question for the president, because what we're sadly lacking these days is any strategic sensibilities with respect to foreign policy and our military strategy overall. We are in crisis around the world, and the president has not enunciated a foreign policy or a strategic vision at all in the first place. Out of the White House, all we've heard are phrases like leading from behind, and that's failed everywhere it's been tried. And we've heard about red lines, starting in Syria. And the president drew red lines and said, if you do such and such, we won't take it. Well, they did it. There was no consequence whatsoever. And so we have failed policy after failed policy after failed policy. And so you know it's getting really bad, and you don't have a strategic vision or a strong military policy when Jimmy Carter comes out and criticizes President Obama for having a weak foreign policy. You know you're in trouble. And so I know that's humorous, but the consequences for this country are not. The threats coming are real. ISIS, the national security reports are already coming in about the threat of ISIS, and it is a severe threat, and we need to act appropriately. And so most of these debates are kind of about tactics, et cetera, but the real issue is we don't have a coherent strategy. Going back, and this is not a partisan issue, right? You go back to Truman or Eisenhower, for 50 years in the post-World War II environment, we have had one foreign policy, and it maps up with a Republican creed. Peace is best preserved through a strong national defense. That's what I believe in, and that's what we are sadly lacking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question. The U.S. Senate passed a comprehensive immigration reform bill, but the U.S. House chose not to take action on the issue. It has been reported that the Obama administration is considering acting unilaterally on this issue since Congress was unable to arrive at a deal. If elected to Congress, would you support passage of a comprehensive immigration reform bill, and do you support unilateral action by the White House on this issue? We begin with Dr. Bratt.
Yeah, thank you for the question. No, I do not support a comprehensive immigration bill because that is a pathway for 10 million illegal folks to come into the country and a pathway to citizenship. And I've discussed the downsides and the humanitarian crisis we already have in place at the border because of poor policy that I've opposed. And so when it comes to comprehensive immigration reform, the piece that's been missing ever since Ronald Reagan tried in good faith to negotiate across the aisle to put a policy like that in place is a secure border. That's what we're always missing, right? And so we do not have a secure border, and comprehensive immigration reform is kind of code language that wants to go beyond having a secure border, and to the crony capitalists that I ran against in the primary are out to get cheap labor from abroad. And how are our labor markets doing right now, you economists out there? Terrible, right? It's the one part of our economy that is not healing and mending. And so in the face of a financial crisis that started in 2007, the economy's not growing, and poorly performing labor markets, the crony capitalists want to bring in cheap labor. Well, of course they do. It improves their bottom line and improves their profits. But guess who it's bad for? Guess who has to pick up the unintended costs? You, the taxpayer. And the taxpayer has figured this out, and that's why it's a 95% issue in the 7th District. People are absolutely opposed to having to pick up the tab, not because they don't like people, but because they're already having a hard time making ends meet. So when it comes to immigration reform, if you are negotiating in good faith with the other side should absolutely be in favor of securing the border because both sides, they're in favor of that, right? So once we get that behind us, if we can pass legislation and work across the aisle to get a secure border in place, then I'm open to listening to opening
That's
new
time.
doors. Thank you.
Dr. Trammell?
I don't think the president should act unilaterally in this situation. I think that's an admission and further evidence that this do-nothing Congress has utterly failed. I think the conversation about immigration does belong in Congress, and I think it needs to be a bipartisan conversation. And as Dave alluded to, I think there's a hole in the middle where these bipartisan conversations are not taking place these days, and I think we need to elect people who are willing to reach across the aisle and to work in a bipartisan manner. And just as an aside, Dave and I have worked together 15 years. I guess that gives us some bipartisan experience, right? I do, however, support comprehensive immigration reform because I think without all the moving pieces in place, it's not liable to function correctly. So that does include border security, and if we're going to make rules about the border, we should enforce them. We shouldn't have any rules that we're not intending to enforce. That's broken government. I think it needs to include expanded visas for highly skilled workers, and we need to look at other types of visas. It needs to include a clear pathway to citizenship. I think we need to have all those pieces together. We have before. We can have them again. As an aside, I think it's interesting that my opponent doesn't apply free market economics to the labor force with immigration, and I think the Libertarian candidate would have something to say about this too. I, however, happen to believe that we do need to have the border policy along with all of these other policies in a comprehensive package.
Thank you. Our next question. Labor participation is at a low going back to the late 1970s. Does Congress have a role in changing this decline, and if so, how? And we begin with Dr. Trammell.
Can you clarify what you mean by labor participation?
Workers in the workforce, employment levels.
Employment levels. Well, one way we can improve this is by going back to what I call a 21st century version of Henry Clay's American system. Back in his day, he focused on infrastructure, which meant canals. But in this day and age, the infrastructure are things like BroadNet. And in 85% of this district, people geographically don't have broadband access or high-speed internet access. How can you do business in this day and age without that? In fact, I know I shouldn't show this, but look what's on the podium with me. That is in part the way I do business in the 21st century. It also means infrastructure with transportation. Right here in this region, we have 2 major interstates intersecting in this district. We have 2 of the 5 major railroad corporations. We have access to a deep water port. This is a natural area where we should be experiencing job growth, and we're not. And we're discussing tonight some of the reasons why that may be. I also believe that underparticipation in the workforce is related to the way we are not equipping our students coming out of school. In the same way that I just flashed this, I'll say this in my communication skills I use in my work more than anything else I can think of. can you show me a standardized multiple choice test that measures those skills? We are testing our children to death, and we are not creating a workforce that is viable for the 21st century. In Northern Virginia, there are apprenticeship programs that have 2,000 applicants for a few hundred spots. We are not being smart in how we help our young people get into the workforce. And sometimes this doesn't mean a pathway to college. Some people want to go into these apprenticeships, and we need to reinvigorate our vocational and technical programs. And so I think educational reform is key to getting our labor force back to where it needs to be.
Thank you. Dr. Bratt?
Yep, thank you very much. The labor force participation rate is at its post-World War II low for some very understandable reasons. Chief among them right now is Obamacare. As I've gone around the district in 9 counties in the city, I said, and I still mean, 2 issues are on the front burner for every Virginian that I know, and especially everyone that runs a business, because they are having a hard time hiring and they're having a hard time staying in business. Number 1 is Obamacare. It's crushing small business and mid-sized business and big business. And 2, $1.7 trillion in regulatory burden that comes in all sizes and shapes. It's hard to discuss simply and quickly, but EPA is huge. If you're in the banking sector and the housing sector, Dodd-Frank was 1,200 pages of financial reform. They're still filling in the blanks, and businesses don't even know what the law of the land is. It's hard to make future plans in business when you don't even know what the law says. Obamacare was 3 foot of legislation, by the way, and no one read it, and it passed without 1 Republican vote. So much for working across the aisle, right? I wish we had a little bipartisanship on that one. Getting back to the labor force participation rate, Jack is correct. Education is the way to solve that problem. We are not competing on a global level, and as mentioned, our math and science test scores are not where they ought to be. But the one solution which stands out above all others that we need to do to solve all of these problems is get our economy growing again. I've served 2 governors in Virginia. I did my PhD on economic growth. That's why I think we need to send an economist up to Congress to get this economy moving again. You sense a recurring theme here? The way you hire people is through business creation. Hillary Clinton this week said, companies don't create
That's time.
jobs. Unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, your final question tonight. According to this year's Americans Values Survey, nearly half of Americans who once believed in the American dream, defined as the belief that if you worked hard, you'll get ahead, think it no longer exists. Similarly, close to half of all Americans over 18 think their generation is better off financially than their children's will be. As educators and aspiring national leaders, what do you tell our students in the audience about to enter this challenging world and workforce to convince them that such a gloomy outlook is wrong?
And we begin with Dr. Bratt.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, you know, this would have been my 19th year at Randolph-Macon, and I ran a nice little program here called the Moral Foundations of Capitalism program. And so what I would tell students is let's work on the moral foundations of capitalism and get this economy going again. And so basically the logic in this answer is the same as in the past. The American dream is in question. That's why I said we need to send an economist up to Washington and to Congress to do what? To restore confidence in what? Our basic American institutions and principles and values. I've done research on this for the past 20 years. One of the economists I follow is Deidre McCloskey. She has a very simple thesis, and that is if you want economic growth, you better speak in moral terms that are positive. You better say business is good. I don't see that theme coming out of our administration right now. Hillary Clinton, just to score political points last week, I almost finished this statement, said this week, businesses don't create jobs, right? I don't know, right, because there's something wrong with business. Business is not the bad guys. Business is the good guys. and the first time economic growth took off in modern history. Deidre surveys 26 chapters. I won't bore you with all 25 of them, right? But the usual answers are not correct. It's not capital accumulation, it's not education, it's not rule of law, it's not private property rights, it's not geography. It's when, for the first time in human history, we started calling business people morally good. That's a shocking thesis, and I think she's correct, and she's got Nobel friends that say she's on the right path there. And so what would I say to young people? I say the American dream is within reach, but we have to end the policies that are in place right now. President Obama does not seem to be friendly toward business. He wants to shut them down in policy after policy after policy.
That's time.
Thank you.
We're getting into sync. Dr. Trammell?
Point of clarification, Hillary is not on the ballot.
She may be.
And for the record, I disagree with what she said. I happen to agree with you in the general sense. In terms of answering this question for our students, and I know many of you are in the audience today, let me answer in a specific way first and then in a general way second. In a specific way, part of how we have to address your future is through student loan reform. I met with a bunch of doctors last week, and they told me that many of them will come out of med school with more than $300,000 in student loans. They'll be 29 years old, and I asked them when they will pay that off. And they said, well, generally the plans that we're on, you pay it off when you're 60. That's when you finish paying it off. And I thought about my own student loan coming out of graduate school, which I haven't paid off yet. President Obama and Michelle Obama didn't pay their student loans off until the year before they went into the White House. We are shackling our young people with an enormous amount of debt. We're charging them higher interest rates. I'm paying 7.5% interest on my student loan, but I got a truck at 0%. My mortgage is at 3.87%. Why are we doing this? So I think addressing the student loan and the rising cost of tuition in higher ed is key. But I think we also need to start designing our communities for your generation. And some of the towns and communities in Virginia are already doing this, like Danville, I believe, is a place that's trying to do this. They're trying to get internet free in all the businesses. They're trying to design their cul-de-sacs with bike trails behind the roads so that you can ride your way to work. They're trying to design their communities for the 20-somethings so that after you go to UVA, after you go to Randolph-Macon, you come back to your community and become a productive member of the economy there. So I think there's some community engineering that we can do to help make this a world where you're going to be really interested to be in the 7th District after you graduate from college.
Thank you. That was our last question. We'll now move on to our closing statements. And again, Dr. Trammell, you won the coin toss on that, so you elected to speak last on the closing statement. And so we'll begin with Dr. Bratt.
Thank you. Thank you again for hosting President Lindgren, Randolph-Macon. What a great night. Students, thanks for coming out and playing a part in the political process. It truly is important. If you want the American dream, vote for me next Tuesday, and you'll get it. While history has proven that free markets can turn economies around and produce the American dream, our president continues to turn to top-down government policies that have failed miserably over the course of history and over the course of the last 6 years. Jack kind of wants to distance himself and says that these people are not on the ticket, but that's not the point. Their policies are on the ticket, and Jack does not want to announce even on his signs, but he is running as a Democrat. And so he is taking Democrat money, and he has Democrat consultants up from Atlanta that are running negative ads, and they should get an ethics paper for doing so. And so if I were tied to President Obama's policies, I ran against them, right? Obamacare is a disaster. Illegal immigration is a disaster. The debt and unfunded liability issues that I've covered in detail tonight are a disaster for this country. I think you ought to send an economist up to D.C. to fix the economy and provide confidence once again in our core American institutions and values. Let me just go into detail on one example. Let's cover Obamacare. Jack says he doesn't want more taxes in other debates and other forums, but Obamacare is a $1 trillion tax hike, $1 trillion tax hike on Americans. So you can say you don't like taxes, but he's for a program which is a $1 trillion tax hike, and that matters. That program is kicking 250,000 Virginians off their health insurance policies. after the election, as I've covered. These are not unintended consequences. This is exactly how the law was written. I want to repeal and defund Obamacare. I support a fair or a flat
That's
tax
time.
to get this economy moving again. And I pledge to secure programs for seniors going forward.
That's time.
To protect Social Security and Medicare. Thank you all very much for having us tonight. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Dr. Trammell?
Let me echo that and say thank you so much for having us here tonight. I look around the room and I see so many familiar faces. I miss this place. I'm hoping I'm not coming back, but I thank you all for being a part of this participatory democracy tonight. I also would encourage us not to act in this time out of fear and not to act out of a sense of crisis. I think instead we should go back to what I said initially in quoting Jefferson, that we need to acknowledge our history, acknowledge where we are, and there are some challenges there. But we need to have the dreams of the future. We need to have the vision. So for me, that means 2 years from now, I can come back and I can talk to you about comprehensive immigration reform. In 2 years, I can come back and I can visit you and talk to you about the school climate improving and special educators finally getting a break for all the hard work they do. And maybe somebody holding the Department of Education accountable for the accountability movement. In 2 years, I'd like to be able to come back to you and say that a do-nothing Congress has turned into a do-something Congress. In 2 years, I'd like to come back and say that we've made health care work better. In 2 years, I'd like to come back and say we're doing better to our vets. We didn't talk about them much tonight, but we need to do some things to help our vets and to reform the VA. In 2 years, I'd like to come back and tell you that we've got jobs here that we didn't have 2 years ago. I'd like to be able to tell you that we live in a safer world, and I'd like to be able to tell you young people that we are starting to rearrange the way we live in our communities so that you will come back and be a part of our communities. The 7th District needs you here. So again, I thank you for being here tonight and being a part of this shared vision, a part of history. I ask for your vote November 4th. Thank you.
Stay there. Stay there. Well, gentlemen, these folks appreciated you so much tonight, they didn't even wait for me to ask them to applaud. But we do thank you. You've both made us proud, and we wish you the best of luck in the coming week. I'd hate to see both of you. I really don't want to see either of you come back. So, you know. But we're going to welcome one of you back with very open arms. For those interested in more debate discussion here tonight, please join us in the Pavilion in Birdsong Hall for a post-debate town hall panel discussion. And let's give our candidates another round of applause.